transportation EAC at dot.ca.gov, and we'll have them returned as quickly as possible. American Sign Language translation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Live closed captioning is also available. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options there to choose from. Speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask that you please state your name before speaking. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translation. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. You should see the control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you'll find the raise hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you, and staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment, and staff will read that on your behalf. Do your best to be concise, and we ask you to make your point in 3 minutes or less, and for some reason, if we have many speakers on a topic, we will limit to 1 minute if needed. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Justin. And with that, I will hand it to Camille to do our land acknowledgement.
Hey y'all, my name's Camille Randolph. I use they, them pronouns. I'm an equity analyst at the Caltrans Director's Office of Equity and Tribal Affairs, and I'll be reading our land acknowledgement today. So we acknowledge that the land we now call California is the ancestral land of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls the state home. Okay. And now we can take any public comment on items not on the agenda. So clerk, is there anyone looking to make public comment?
Thank you, Camille. Not seeing any requests to comment at this time.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Camille. Thank you, Justin. So that takes us to tab number 4 on our agenda, which is the election of a subcommittee chair. And as many of you know, with the creation of subcommittees, there's an opportunity for EAC members to take on a leadership role of this subcommittee. So the subcommittee chair, just for context, would be responsible for facilitating the subcommittee meetings and working with staff on developing the meeting agendas. They would also be responsible for reporting out at each of the full EAC meetings on the activities of the subcommittee, introducing any recommendations or actions that the subcommittee would like the full EAC to consider, and generally just tracking work in progress that the subcommittee has made. So at this first meeting, we would like to provide folks with the opportunity to either nominate yourselves or a colleague to serve as chair of this subcommittee. So with that, I will open the floor for nominations of subcommittee chair. And feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute and chime in. Yes, Randy.
Morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Good to see you. This is Randy Torres Van Vleck, EAC member, and I'd be happy to put my name in the hat to chair this subcommittee.
Thank you, Randy. Any other nominations, either for members themselves or for other members? I'll give folks a minute. Okay, seeing no other hands or any indication that somebody would like to nominate anyone else, we have one nomination on the floor, which is Randy Torres Van Vleck. And at this time, I will ask Justin to conduct a roll call vote, and you can either say yes or no in favor of appointing Randy as chair of this subcommittee. And so, Justin, with that, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Carrie Akimi Hernandez,
Yes.
Lisa Marie Alvarado,
Yes.
Abamel Chavez Hernandez,
Yes.
Ana Gonzalez,
Yes.
Andres Ramirez,
Yes.
Michelle Rousey, Randy Torres Van Vleck,
Yes.
Pualani Vasquez. The vote passes.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Randy. We are happy to have you as our new subcommittee chair. So thank you for putting your name in the hat. And with that, is there any public comment on this item?
I've not seen any request at this time to comment on the item.
Fantastic. All right. Congratulations, Randy.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your support. Yeah, happy to share more about myself as well and my interest in this. And I think there'll be opportunities to do that, but I'm honored to serve, in the role of chair of this subcommittee, and creating meaningful community engagement opportunities at Caltrans and statewide transportation agencies, the district level, regional level, local level, something I'm passionate about and I've worked on for over 15 years in San Diego, where I live. The image behind me that you see is a picture of Terralta Park, which is the first freeway covered park in California. And the reason it exists is because decades of community engagement, organizing, and self-determination by leaders of City Heights who at times had to fight really hard to get this project built, right? It took many years and a lot of efforts and a lot of lessons learned. And I've been honored to learn a lot from the leaders who helped secure the park and work with them on add-on facilities. The work I do today, I work closely in the field of community engagement and community planning, visioning, self-determination. So I'm excited to take on this role to help make sure that our feedback, there are communities that have been historically excluded from decision making, and those who are also most impacted by the decisions that have been made are able to be engaged in a meaningful way and are able to influence Caltrans policies in a way that can improve their quality of life. So I appreciate your belief in me to serve in this committee, and looking forward to taking on this leadership role. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Randy. I believe I speak for everyone when I say the subcommittee is in good hands. And just in terms of logistics go, for the remainder of this meeting, staff can take us through the agenda, and then we'll make sure we meet with you and each of the subcommittee chairs to prep you all for future subcommittee meetings and make sure you have the resources that you need to.
That sounds good. Thanks, Carolyn.
Of course. Okay, well, with that takes us to tab 5 on our agenda, which is a presentation and discussion on the Caltrans statewide engagement playbook. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Rosen, who is our statewide community engagement program manager, and the rest of Sarah's team. So Sarah, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Just to introduce myself again, I presented last month to the EAC. My name is Sarah Rosen, and I use she, her pronouns, wearing a blue shirt and glasses. So we're talking about the engagement program, but more specifically, I'd like to share with you the statewide community engagement playbook today. So we'll be talking about briefly reminder of the background, and then we'll be getting into what is the playbook, an overview, and open it up to some questions. And then we wanted to cover some feedback that we're requesting from the subcommittee. So just to kind of recap what we're trying to do as we're looking at the planning and project delivery life cycle, we recognize that the most opportunity for flexibility for input happens early in the planning and project delivery life cycle. And while there have been different folks in Caltrans that are responsible for the engagement in their part of the process, we're really working to better de-silo our processes and work a little bit more synergistically across our department. So the engagement that happens early is really carried through the life of the project. So when we met last, we discussed some of the major components of our engagement program, starting with the director's policy as that overarching guidance, and then our statewide playbook talks about how all these people and processes work together. We hope to have district playbooks to really fill in those district nuances and really encouraging public engagement plans for our plans and projects that can really tailor the engagement efforts, right-sizing the engagement for our plans and projects. So today we'll be talking about that statewide playbook, which is really the guidance for Caltrans staff on how we can be doing engagement better as a department. So what is in the statewide community engagement playbook? This effort is led by headquarters, and it's providing general roles and responsibilities for staff on how to do engagement. It also shares best practices for developing those public engagement plans and having better continuity from planning through project delivery. It highlights the different tools we have available for staff to use when conducting community engagement, different methods and platforms that are available to reach different groups, considerations in understanding that, different groups, different communities require different types of engagement, and how we can build better working relationships with our partners and community. So just to rewind about how this document has been coming to fruition, it all started in April of 2023, where we comprised an internal advisory committee of staff, recognizing that these staff all work with their external counterparts and bringing that subject matter expertise to developing the initial content of the statewide playbook. So this committee started brainstorming, creating a rough outline, then an annotated outline, and then beginning to draft content. So that happened for a little over a year. And then we also held across the state district listening sessions with staff in the various functions to understand what they needed in these playbooks and what would be beneficial when they are beginning to conduct engagement. What tools, what resources, what information do they need? And then from there, we put all this information together and created the draft document that we published to Caltrans staff to review in the months of November through January of this year. Sorry, that should say November 2024 to January 2025. And from there, we've been working to incorporate the feedback that we received from Caltrans staff to improve the document. And so we hope to have an interim version to share in September to really improve from there. So we're really excited to meet with you all today to get your input. So this is really the next step from our presentation in June to really hone the sections that are open for change. We also plan to do some other external input, including going to the legislature and doing some surveying. And so we hope to have a published first iteration in February of 2026. So, as I mentioned, this document is still in draft, but I do want to share with you an outline of what the contents are looking like. So we have chapters 1 and 2 is really talking about the background of, what is engagement and why is it important to do it at Caltrans. Chapter 3 is really talking about these processes, really internal processes. And chapter 4 is talking about how we work together, strategies, best practices. Chapter 5 is talking about the tools like the Caltrans engagement portal and those public engagement plans. And chapter 6, roles, how they relate specifically to engagement. And we do hope that districts will begin drafting their own district playbooks. So there's a chapter in here discussing information about that. And then chapter 8 is all those resources, annotations, that sort of thing. So we're really hoping to get your input on chapter 4, this chapter about how we work together, best practices. So let me jump into kind of the layout of that chapter. So chapter 4 focuses on how we work together. It's separated into 2 parts. The first part is recommended strategies and best practices for building working relationships. So it touches on working with our partners, working with California Native American tribes, the media, elected officials, community-based organizations, and it also has considerations for Title VI, limited English proficiency, ADA considerations. And then chapter 4 is getting into, how we work with these different groups, different methods of getting input. So whether that's virtual, in-person, hybrid engagement, going to community. And so while we have some initial draft of this, we are really interested in hearing from you, helping us fill in what's missing, what we may not have been considering. So this content is really not final, it's not set in stone, and we're really looking for your input to improve this chapter and really identify what needs to be spelled out more clearly for Caltrans staff. So with that, I can open it up to some questions before we get into discussion. Oh, go ahead, Randy.
Thank you so much for the presentation and the overview of all your work to date. Would you be willing to pull up the timeline slide again?
Yeah.
Please. Okay, thanks. Could you share a little bit more about the legislative committee presentations? Is that which committees do you think would be appropriate for the presentation for this item?
Yes. So for our internal advisory committee, this group here, we have our legislative affairs team involved, and they suggested including a presentation to the transportation committees regarding this effort. Martha?
Hi, good afternoon. Well, first of all, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I did want to, just for clarity, I really applaud this effort. I think it's really important as as Martha Armis Kelly, chair of the EAC, I wanted to make sure that I made reference to this document, this playbook, because it's going to be very instrumental in how we look at projects and we can see where our possible engagement may lie. So looking at the um, the level of engagement or the possibility of engagement through this matrices is very important as we develop more opportunities to engage in different projects. We can actually see where our focus or our emphasis can be either leveraged or acquiesced in the different levels, different time frames of said project. So it's really important to have this available for us. And I just wanted to remind the members that this is kind of what we had discussed about looking at how the level of engagements are played out, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. Just to add to that, you know, the playbook is just one tool in our toolbox. We do plan to publish it for transparency, but it is intended for Caltrans staff to do better, to understand processes better and have a guide. And we are working on other materials as well for informing the public on, you know, our processes and making it a little bit simpler. But yeah, we do intend to share it, but it's not the only thing that we're working on. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you. I'm not sure who is next. Andres?
Thank you. This is Andres, EAC member. Yeah, I definitely echo Marta's sentiments, right? Another thought that comes to my mind for the playbook, the idea of creating metrics for engagement, right? You know, a straight up number of people that should be engaged for a project for it to be effective. I don't necessarily know a formula right now, right? But I think that's something that we should definitely consider. Just because, you know, in my experience in the past, especially with agencies, right, community engagement is really treated as like a checkbox thing. Like, oh, we had a meeting, some people came, we're moving on with the project, right? I think the other piece that I did also want to bring up, what are, will there be opportunities for training on community engagements for staff? I know that's not necessarily a skill set that you know staff people may have naturally, and I think that's an important piece to have a true commitment to engagement. And then lastly, also, and maybe this comes to the presentation with legislative, right? But you know, what kind of budget's dedicated to community engagement, right? A commitment of resources to make sure that engagement is actually done properly.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Couple notes here. Definitely, we don't want staff thinking that engagement is a check the box process. We are working on the metrics portion, and this is more in our public engagement plan guide of developing and implementing those strategies. But yeah, we could always improve these other documents that we're working on. And then training for staff, we have developed a community engagement, equitable engagement toolbox with resources for staff. And in that toolbox, we've also developed an on-demand two-part training module of equitable engagement. So we do hope to expand these resources for staff when our time and budget allows. And then in terms of budgeting, we have developed some work breakdown structure codes. Maybe Mary Lou could speak on these codes, if you would like to, Mary Lou.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Mary Lou Taylor. I'm with the Division of Project Management at Caltrans. What Sarah was referring to is our projects and project managers have a way of estimating the cost of a project overall through the different phases. Our hope, our intent, is to get a better idea of the level of engagement that is needed as early as possible. So when we request funding from the CTC, that will be incorporated into the project budget. It will take some time because we are still in the early baby stages of this effort. We will have, as we go along, a better idea of how many hours and resources it will take for meaningful and proper engagement. And we hope that over time, our cost estimates will be better and more accurate as time goes by, so that we'll have a appropriate amount of funding for engagement for projects.
Thank you, Mary Lou. I hope that those answered your questions a little bit. Anna?
Yes, hi everyone. Ana Gonzalez, Vice Chair of the EAC. Thank you so much for this information. I know a lot of folks have been awaiting this moment and to see like the updates and everything, because as we know, the EAC and at the state level, I feel like things are moving along when it comes to acknowledging the importance of community engagement, but it hasn't, you know, kind of expanded into the local agencies. And so my question is, you know, we talked about trainings and all of that, but will the playbook be presented to the local agencies at each district, or how would that work? Or is it just going to be like, here's the playbook, you know, run with it? Because I feel like there needs to be some acknowledgement at the local agencies.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and we are just still building all of these things. And so the statewide playbook will be available for sharing. So we do hope that Caltrans staff can share it with their respective districts and use it when they're developing their district playbooks to really fill in, you know, for their specific local agencies. We also hope to share a public engagement plan template and guide for local agencies to be able to use. So these are all things that we do want to do. It's just, as Mary Lou mentioned, we're just still building our plane, but definitely on our radar, and we definitely see the value and importance of including our partners and bringing them along with us for those that may be a little bit behind. Randy?
Thanks. Appreciate that comment. I had a similar one actually. What's the and I'm looking at the timeline here. What's the plan? What, I don't believe it's been published yet, right? What do we have a plan on when we're going to release the draft playbook? What does the community engagement process look like for the playbook? I see here the timeline for EAC input, but will there be a public you know, solicitation for feedback on the plan?
At this time, we don't plan to do a public solicitation, since this is an internal guidance document. It's not written in plain language. It is a technical document for Caltrans staff to follow. So that's why we're kind of doing targeted engagement of specific groups to help with this guidance. But There's not a lot open to change, as I had mentioned how we're going to be working on Chapter 4 with you all. Our processes at Caltrans from planning through project delivery are pretty set in stone. So the opportunity for a change for this playbook is really focused on Chapter 4 of, what best practices can we share with Caltrans staff to do better engagement with our community and different groups. So at this time, we don't anticipate doing any public engagement on the statewide playbook.
Okay, that's interesting. Will the draft be shared with the EAC and included as part of one of our agenda items so that people that are really curious can review it and see it there?
I can defer to Alexis on this. I think.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in, Sarah. Our intent is to share Chapter 4 with you all. We either will be bringing that in August or later this fall as we get that done. So that would be something that would be shared as an agenda item for this subcommittee and could be shared as an attachment with a full EAC meeting.
Okay, why limit it just to Chapter 4 though? I know it's an internal document, but I see a lot of value in having the document released to the public, and I see Anna's comment as well saying we should probably have it available to the public. I'm just curious why just have feedback on one chapter?
Well, we can definitely take it back to our team and discuss. It is meant to be an internal document. So there are, as Sarah explained, there are a lot of, we can talk through what we can do because it is something that can be helpful to share with folks, but it's meant to be a tool for our staff. And so as Sarah said, it's really just like outlining the roles and responsibilities of staff internally, our internal things like how to use the portal and other tools. Chapter 4 is really where we wanted the input because it's on the how we best engage with our partners, whether those be local jurisdictions as well as community-based organizations, how we can best reach folks who are older or younger or folks with disabilities, really looking at how can Caltrans best tailor engagement, whereas other parts of it are more specific to if you're a project manager, you need to do these things type of information. And they're more sort of set within the responsibilities of Caltrans processes. And then as she shared here, Chapter 7 is just providing instructions to the districts for how to develop their own playbooks that are better tailored to the working with their local communities and their jurisdictions in their districts. So we can definitely take it back as a team and think through how best to share. But where we really are hoping to get you all and your involvement is on the how we work together section of it. And that our intent was to share that chapter with you all to review and provide feedback on.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Alexis. Martha?
Right. I think, and my recommendation would be that if we were really looking at it in a way that you want to get the true value of what your community engagement is, iron sharpens iron. And I know that you've been doing the work in your spaces for a long time, but obviously we're trying to up the ante, so to speak. And in order to up the ante, I feel that it's really important not only to have us on this conversation, as you said, for just this section, but I think that it would be of value to use this opportunity of having these subject matter experts that are doing the work in community engagement to actually have a workshop with you all and give those that are going to be the trainers some good input on how to speak to audiences, because that's one of the things that we often have challenges with, is that how do we engage with folks in a way that's meaningful and intentional. The other is revisiting at what community engagement you have. Why do we do community engagement, or what is this? Why, like the first chapter? And I'd be really curious to know what your position is on a community engagement, because if you're only sitting in your own circle, circling information, and if it's not really as robust as it could be, then you're only going to glean from each other, and that's not really what would benefit. What would benefit is to use the expertise of your folks that you have here and be able to ask those questions, have a workshop, have a shadow me kind of thing, or have role playing, so that you could see and actually think of how you would present a type of material and get some real meaty answers, and maybe uncomfortable answers, that would help bolster your community engagement to a better place.
Thank you for that feedback.
And Sarah, I'll just add, as Sarah mentioned, this is only, this is just one of the things we're working on. We would like to involve you all in thinking more about the training, case studies, other things we can be bringing to help educate our staff and provide them with the skill sets they need to be able to do better engagement. So this isn't the only opportunity. I guess I just want to share that. And we really would like to work with you all on thinking through some additional things that we can be developing in consultation with you all to help educate and prepare our staff to better work with community.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
Area Kemi.
Thank you, Sarah. So I have a couple of questions from a few perspectives. One from a tribal perspective. I wanted to know if there's a way to have consideration from a preventative standpoint, or when new projects are being developed, to give consideration to traditional plants. There are a lot of pollutants in the way that people gather plants, like tule or other plants to weave baskets. And so I wondered if we can give consideration for those future projects, and perhaps if there are new projects, to have like a way to have like a placard or like a QR code to make a connection to how that relates to the tribal communities. And if, in addition to like NAHAC, the Native American Heritage Commission, for cultural monitors to contact, to know like who is a contact list that, to reach out to communities to have their perspective early in the project, to see what feedback they may have, or what past significance for that particular project site may be. And the other question that I have is, do you have consideration for safe routes for our vulnerable communities, to know that if there's a way to identify opportunities that there may not be safe ways to get to our transportation, to bus stops and other things like that. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I think that may be kind of segueing into, capturing information from you all. We do have like a virtual brainstorm that we were hoping to move into. So if there aren't any further questions, I think maybe now would be a good time, so we're capturing your input, Carrie. If no one else has any other questions, we can move into our discussion.
Yeah, I'll just share that. Oh, Karen, did you have a follow-up?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you, Sarah, and I'll wait to expand on that.
I'm sorry, Carrie, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, I was just gonna acknowledge that you go ahead, and then Sarah, if you'd like to expand on what I just shared before, when we segue to the new section, I'm ready for you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Appreciate that. No, I would share that my preference would be that we involve the public in the public engagement plan. I think that's important. That this is a big milestone for the agency, and we want to ensure that we have the best plan possible. And so be happy to continue the conversation on that, but I do believe that's I think that would be the best path forward. And I've seen the role that internal plans, I understand the role for internal documents. I've also seen how, some internal documents that weren't released to the public and were released at a later date actually had a alter the course of different project planning processes. So I recognize, their importance to be available to the community and the public. So hopefully we can find a resolution that allows for meaningful community engagement on this, the development of this plan. So appreciate you.
Thank you for your input, Randy. And as Alexis mentioned, we can definitely bring your input back to our advisory committee, which is comprised of management and Caltrans across the different planning and project delivery functions. Okay, so I can hand it over to Jazz, who will kind of walk us through how we can use our brainstorming mural. That's the tool we're using today, but if you haven't used it before or you don't feel comfortable, I think we can also use the chat and take your information and move it into the mural. But I'll hand it over to Jazz to share his screen and kind of walk us through for those of us who maybe aren't familiar with mural.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jazz Chalon. I'm with Caltrans's Community Engagement Resource Branch. And today, just like Sarah was saying, we'll go over how to use a mural board and what it is for today's activity. So the mural board is just a little fun kind of platform that we will use for cross collaboration to kind of produce ideas. More specifically, we'll use it to share ideas on how we can better work with the communities we serve that are in our plans and projects. So I'll just go over kind of some of the basics of just how to navigate it, kind of like the IT portion. So hopefully everyone's already in there now. Does everybody have access to it, or if anybody needs a second?
We did put the link in the chat, so you should be able to just click that.
So just navigating wise, if you click into some of the white spaces, that's how you're going to be able to move the board around. And then to zoom in, if you have a mouse with a wheel, you can scroll with the wheel. That's how you'll be able to kind of zoom in on certain sections. Like if you started typing in a certain area, say I start typing in this box, then you'll be able to see it. And you'll notice it gets smaller the more you zoom out, but the more you zoom in, you'll be able to read more clearly. Also, there's going to be functionalities like if you agree with the comment, you can always go to the bottom left of the screen and you'll see an emoji reaction. You give a thumbs up, a happy face, a heart, etc. And then that'll kind of notate it so that we can get like real strong opinions on certain ideas that maybe have been inputted. I'll go ahead and that's kind of really the basics that we're going to use it for. If you don't have a wheel to scroll with, like to zoom in, at the bottom right of the screen, there is another functionality to be able to zoom in manually. And that way you can kind of move around the board. The board itself, if you're trying to move around quickly, I suggest just zooming out and you'll be able to move a lot quicker. And you can zoom in where you need to go. That's kind of the basics right there. And if you have any questions during this, feel free to just let us know and we'll be more than happy to help you. And I'll give it back to Sarah to go over the different sections.
Thank you, Jazz. So yeah, if you have any issues, just pop your question in the chat. But if you also don't want to use the mural, you can just put your idea in the chat too. So I'd like to start in the top left corner, community groups, partners, leaders, identification. So getting into chapter 4, we're really interested to know, you know, who should we be reaching? And I know we had identified, you know, making sure we're including these tribal plants on our project. So this is kind of a good place. We're interested to know, you know, who should we be reaching? Who should we be engaging with on our plans and projects, or different groups that we should be targeting? You know, I know there's some folks on this call, maybe I saw some public health organization or community health organization. So just interested in, you know, what should we be including in chapter 4 for that groups that staff should be engaging with on our plans and projects. So feel free to raise your hand or put your idea in one of the stickies and we can talk about it. Oh yeah.
Do we need to be logged in to the mural
No,
account
you
to
shouldn't.
edit it?
You shouldn't need to be, but let's check the settings if maybe there's an
Yeah, because
problem.
I see a Randy moving around there.
I'm able to move it,
I'm
but at the
having
top
the
it says
same
view
issue.
There's
only.
an option to
You have-
enter as a visitor, it says. Right below it says.
I see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm having the same issue.
Yeah, it says login to edit. I'm in view only stage.
I think, Jazz, maybe I cannot change the settings on the mural. Are you able to change the access in that share tab on the right? Yeah. Maybe something. Okay. Are you able to change that, or should we just use this more as a scribe area and we can do the typing if we're not able to?
I think in the interest of time, that may be best.
Okay, sounds good. So maybe just raise your hand and we can add it into these stickies here.
Hi, Sarah. This is Trung. If you go to where it says share,
Yeah, I
go
don't.
to manage access. This is
You have
your
to give us access. It says that
Yeah.
on there because it says request to access. I sent the request.
go to people with access, and then you can
Yeah,
change that where to the right, change that.
I can't change it. It's not clickable.
Okay, someone has whoever's the owner to this mural board is the one that can change it.
Right. Exactly.
It's not me. But that's okay. We can just use it as a whiteboard here. Sorry about that, everyone.
Something to work on, right?
Yes. Thank you for your kindness. Okay, well, Jazz, I think you'll have to be the one typing here.
Yeah, it says I'm a visitor.
Yeah, so Carrie would like to include tribal communities. Thank you. What other community groups, partners, community leaders should we be including in this chapter for Caltrans staff? When you're thinking of Caltrans, engaging mobility justice groups, And we're thinking of who should be considered to be included in these engagement efforts. Churches.
I don't think that we can all collaborate because we can't really put in our information. So
Yeah, please just say whatever you want us to add and we can throw it on the board or, yeah.
it's on the
Okay,
chat.
great. Perfect, we can add that on there. Yeah, neighborhood organizations, youth groups. Any other groups we should be considering? Leaders.
I think because I was just reviewing the SB1 work, I feel like anybody that's going to be applying for grants is also important because you're setting the standard. So I met Caltrans through my local TCAG. So anybody that's doing those type of administrations, I love what Abimiel is writing in the chat because there is an acknowledgement of like, where are the people in some of these spaces? So just to double down on that avenue as well, I'm thinking of like your bike coalitions. Our local city has an environmental group that's like an environmental coalition. Um, those folks are normally the people that are interested in like those art installations on the ground, right? Those folks normally bring really good energy to things.
En friega, ya voy de camino para llegar allá. Okay.
Yeah, grassroots and community-based organizations. AARP, that's a good one. Yeah, thank you. And artist communities. Any others? We can move on to how we can reach these groups. Language justice, indigenous languages, safe routes to schools. Thank you. Okay, well, we can always add more later. We can scroll down to the bottom, community nuances. So we've identified groups that Caltrans should be working with. What should Caltrans staff know when engaging with these groups? How can Caltrans best engage and reach these groups? And what maybe should Caltrans staff understand when we are engaging with these groups?
I love this question, Sarah. I would encourage folks to model community engagement when they're engaging. So what does that mean? Is the room accessible that they're presenting information in? Is it decentralized, right? Where there's no hierarchy, it's genuinely a relationship that you're fostering. Was there food, right? People's time is not always free, right? You're taking dinner time, so really modeling the practices you're giving is an energetic strength that could give you guys boost.
Thank you. Yeah, and I see a couple more in the chat. The jargon, as we say, Caltransies. making it simple language. Using local bike walk committees to reach partners. Language access. Yeah, what else should Caltrans staff know about working with these different groups or accessing maybe hard to reach communities? Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, how do we include these best practices for our tribal communities? Yeah, valuing their expertise. Thank you. Food, interpretation, purchasing food from locally owned businesses. And training two tribal communities and immigrant groups to collaborate. Thank you. What other best practices? Acknowledging past harms and displacement. Yeah, probably a thumbs up on that. Sticky. Jazz and Trung, thank you for being our scribes today. What other ways can Caltrans staff implement to reach the affected communities of our plans and projects? And feel free to come off mute too if you just want to talk. Yeah, Andres, do you want to say a little bit more about your comment?
Yeah, we find that it's very difficult for folks sometimes to come out to a specific meeting in a specific meeting place. Reaching out to people where they're at already is always a good strategy to truly engage people on whatever project may be coming. So it could be bus stops, it could be the grocery stores, schools, tabling out there on the sidewalk where folks will engage with you, and really participate in the discussions you're trying to have. So
Thank you. I love
don't
that.
do those meetings at in a meeting place as well. I'm just saying that.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
You're asking me, sir?
Yeah, I missed your last sentence.
Oh, I'm saying not to say we don't do also, organized meeting at a meeting space. I'm just saying having a mixture of how you're engaging people.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, a lot going on in the chat. Anyone want to share a little bit more about the comments that they put in the chat?
I can expand on what I shared to highlight success. So just finding ways to capture and track how we're implementing things and improvements to all the different things that we're trying to touch on. So if we're reducing things or improving access, finding ways to track that and then share that for community outreach for people to see that happening and visualize.
Thank you. Yeah. Keeping the community informed of where their input is going. So important.
Yeah, I agree with that. Understanding how the feedback influenced the process, sharing that life cycle of how the feedback was incorporated and what the next steps are. And even if something can't be incorporated, explaining why, so there's a conversation around it and an opportunity for learning and maybe even creative, solution making to that problem, to that potential barrier. I'm inspired by the former Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox's comments from years ago, recognizing the wrongs of the past, correcting them, and ensuring that we're not replicating them. I'd recommend that. I think that could be incorporated into the community nuances. Because it can be frustrating when, it's good when the agency is able to recognize harms of the past, but if there's a replication of that, makes you wonder if it's really being acknowledged and what the action is to correct that.
Good point. Thank you, Randy.
I like Andres. I wanted to build up Andres's comment, and he just shared in the chat too, showing that there's engagement for all the phases. I've seen I agree with that. I think oftentimes, especially for project level planning, that the design phase gets overlooked, and that's the one of the most, I think, critical opportunities for engagement. That decides whether there's going to be a four-legged crosswalk or a two-legged crosswalk, whether it's going to be a pedestrian phase or not, whether it's going to be a transit-only lane or a bus station that's accessible or not. So I think and it goes back to the training point that he shared about how our staff and engineers, in particular, in my opinion, who are doing the project management and design, how are they trained on community engagement? So that each of the phases of the project do have community engagement.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, we can move into the third box of outreach strategies. I think we've touched on it already, but wanted to bring specific attention to the methods and platforms, what's effective, and what are maybe some tools that are useful for the public to engage with Caltrans and for Caltrans to reach community. Any tools maybe we should be knowing about?
I feel like in the earlier question, and maybe this copy is over here, is just the fact of like going where people are in addition to having meetings. That is a method. Oh, I like that. Use popular education.
Thank you. Yeah, any other tools that we could be considering about making the Caltrans planning and project delivery process more easy for the general public to understand? Any things that we should be considering?
One thing that comes to mind for me, is going to be different methods for different sectors of a community, right? So, for example, with youth, media tools might be more impactful or effective, more the in person like hands-on type of engagement. So it's having that kind of diversity of how you're approaching folks.
Yeah, thank you. Different ways to convey the same information. I love that. Okay, any final thoughts on this one, and we can move to best practices? Oh, we had one last one. Carrie, did you want to come off mute and share?
Yeah, I noticed that you get a lot more of a turnout if you're able to offer some sort of an incentive, like a gift card, if we want to capture more community engagement and feedback, especially if people have to take off time from work or something, thinking about food, so farmers market, grocery, or gas. So just wanting to give that consideration for budget, as well as having real-time translation available in those community spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd
Go
also
ahead, Randy.
recommend for outreach strategies, really investing in the time to research who the community-based orgs are. Sometimes they can be a little bit harder to find. So just taking the time to do that and check in with community leaders and the regional planning agencies, local cities usually have a good idea of who some of the engaged community partners are, ensuring that they did receive it. The invite, for example, there was a recent tour in Imperial County, and we learned that a couple of the groups were aware of the transportation forum that have been really engaged, and we asked about that, and the staff said they were invited. So sometimes just one email might not be enough. Maybe think about other mediums, a social media invite, a phone call, a text, calendar hold. So yeah, using all the tools. And then when you do find those CBOs, community-based orgs that are hosting meetings, try to get on their agendas so that you're like in their space, the space that they're more comfortable, and then reach out ahead of time to the CBOs to do a one-on-one before you go and present. So that way the CBOs are comfortable with what's shared and they might have feedback as well. And then I think on the food, yeah, food's been shared, but I think even leading with the food at City Hate CDC, where I worked for years, we launched an engagement series called Transit and Tacos, and we set up in near popular transit stops, and we had free tacos for anyone that like gave feedback on a plan, and that was really popular. So making sure that there's good food is important too.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, I think maybe that segues in you had some examples. I have listed here positive Caltrans experiences, but recognizing that you may not have any of those, happy to take any positive engagement experiences like you had mentioned, Randy, that we can report back to our staff. Best practices.
One thing I did want to mention is something that, I think it's very current, and I feel like it's gonna continue to be an issue, right? The culture of fear for community to come out for events these days, especially vulnerable communities. So really kind of utilizing, ensuring like safety for folks or safe space for people when engaging. Because that is, and that could mean like instead of in lieu of having an in-person meeting, maybe having online engagement, right? So folks don't have to expose themselves. Because all this mess with ICE and over policing doesn't seem like it's gonna go away real soon, unfortunately, right? So, but people should still engage, right? And we should be kind of pivot our methods.
Thank you for highlighting that. Other best practices, some good engagement that you've been a part of or been included on?
Yeah, I'd say Caltrans District 11, San Diego, Imperial counties. There's been an investment by the agency and having staff that could be champions for this. And that has been one of the biggest steps forward, is like there's someone there that you can reach out to that thinks big, that makes sure that your feedback is heard and tries their best to have it incorporated. So District 11, I think, has done a really good job with that, with some of the champions that they brought on for community engagement. And one of those champions, Nick Buenviaje and his team, they actually worked on a really creative event to close down a couple of the freeways as part of the Clean California grant and have an open streets event on the freeway. And that was a great engagement opportunity. So it was a fun event. It was creative. We led a bike ride onto the event. So they've done 2 of those in the last 3 years now. One on the 15 and most recently one on the old historic 252. But there's a really powerful video that we shared at an EAC meeting a few months ago. So I think, thinking big, having fun events on highways and programming it is one of the most effective ways to get people engaged.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Other engagement activities that you've been a part of that you would like to share? I see it in the chat here, interactive activities. Any examples of this one? Okay, well, with that, any other final thoughts that you'd like to be captured during this brainstorm that maybe we didn't cover? Okay, hearing none, I can pass it over to Carolyn to wrap up our meeting. And I really appreciate the input and feedback that you've all provided today. We will try to share this mural with you to add anything else that maybe you think about later. We'll keep it open for a week so you can have some time to add to it if you need to. And my apologies for the technical difficulties today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the rest of your team. We do really appreciate you bringing this to the EAC and to the subcommittee in particular. And then just for the rest of the members, we'll make sure that the minutes are available, and we'll work with Randy to make sure that there's a report out provided based off of this discussion, and then we can keep you all posted about next steps in the process of providing feedback on the playbook. So there's that. And then just an administrative oversight on my end. I apologize. For tab 4 for the election of the subcommittee chair, I did not ask for a second to the motion. So for our records, we just need to go back to that. So Randy, you made a motion to nominate yourself as subcommittee chair, and I would like to ask for a second to that motion.
This is Andres. I'll second that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andres. Justin, do we need to do a roll call vote again with the second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I will turn it over to you to conduct a roll call vote.
Great. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Carrie Kimi Hernandez,
Yes.
Lisa Marie Alvarado,
Yes.
Abimael Chavez Hernandez,
Yes.
Ana Gonzalez, Ana Gonzalez, Andres Ramirez,
Yes.
Michelle Rousey, Randy Torres Van Black,
Yes.
Pualani Vasquez. The motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Justin, and congratulations again, Randy. Apologies for that. In the last few minutes that we have, I wanted to just touch base on scheduling. So the next subcommittee meeting will take place in August, and we wanted to get a sense from this group right now if there is a general idea of any idea, like any dates that we need to avoid. So like days of the week generally, or if there are days that you all can identify that often work for you. So if you know my Wednesdays are always not an option, please let us know. And then we can take that information, look at our staff availability, and then we will put out some dates and times again for you all to respond to, similar to how we scheduled this meeting. But I'll just open up the floor now if anybody has any days that really do not work for them so we can avoid them.
I'll be on PTO the first full week of August from the 4th to the 8th.
Okay, that is good to know. Thank you.
And then generally Mondays, we have an all staff meeting from 1:30 to 3:30, so wouldn't be available on Mondays from 1:30 to 3:30.
Okay. Okay, other folks? All right, and in the chat, Abimael, I see your comment. So August 15th from 1 to 4 doesn't work. Otherwise, you're free. And then Carrie, I see third Wednesday, you were also not available. So we'll try and make sure to avoid those dates as well. Anybody else want to chime in just for anything that we need to flag as people's availability? Okay, seeing none, we will work with that information. And then you all can expect a doodle poll or another polling link from us so that we'll still make sure, based off the dates and times that we can offer, that we pick something where most folks are available. Okay. Well, with that, if there is nothing else, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our first subcommittee meeting. I want to congratulate Randy on being elected as subcommittee chair, and we will be in touch with all of you very soon. So the meeting is now adjourned at 11:27.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Here, bye.
Thanks, everyone.